My sister didn't realize I'd been supporting the family financially when she announced, "You're pathetic. Stop showing up to family events and embarrassing us." The champagne glass in my hand was still half full when Vanessa said it. We were at her engagement party, one of those over-the-top events at the Ritz-Carlton downtown with ice sculptures and a string quartet and 200 guests I didn't know. I'd driven 3 hours from Pittsburgh to Cleveland for this, wearing the same suit I'd worn to every family event for the past 5 years because it was the only one I owned that still fit. Vanessa was in a white Vera Wang dress that cost more than my monthly rent, holding court near the dessert table, surrounded by her finance friends and her fiancé's family. I'd been standing near the bar trying to look occupied when she turned, saw me, and her face twisted into something between disgust and anger. She walked over with her heels clicking on the marble floor, her voice loud enough that people nearby stopped talking to listen. "You're pathetic," she said again, in case I'd missed it the first time. "Look at you, same cheap suit, same sad expression, nursing one drink all night because you can't afford more. You're embarrassing me in front of Preston's family. Stop showing up to these things if you can't bother to dress appropriately or at least pretend you belong here." My throat went tight. Preston, her fiancé, was a hedge fund manager who drove a Tesla and wore watches that cost 5 figures. The guests were all people like them, successful and wealthy and utterly convinced of their own superiority. And here I was, her older brother Danny, in my off-the-rack suit and scuffed shoes, apparently bringing down the aesthetic of her perfect evening. I'd been supporting our family financially for 8 years when Vanessa made that announcement. Not that she knew. None of them knew. I was 34 years old, worked as a data analyst for a mid-sized tech company in Pittsburgh, made $89,000 a year before taxes. Nothing spectacular, but stable, decent, enough to live on comfortably if you were careful. Except I hadn't been living comfortably because for the past 8 years, I'd been sending money home. It started when our father died suddenly of a heart attack when I was 26, and Vanessa was 21. Dad had been the breadwinner, worked in manufacturing management, had decent life insurance but not enough to cover everything. Mom was 53 at the time, had been a stay-at-home parent for most of our childhood, had some part-time administrative work, but nothing that could support the house or Vanessa's college tuition at Ohio State. The life insurance paid off the remaining mortgage and left about $85,000 for expenses and emergencies. I was 2 years into my first real job, had been planning to save for a house, maybe start dating seriously, build a life. Instead, I started sending money home. $500 a month at first, just to help Mom with utilities and property taxes. Then Vanessa's tuition bills came and I started covering those too. Another $1,200 a month because she was in-state but still expensive. Then Mom's car died and I paid for the replacement, $8,000 for a used Nissan. Then the roof needed repairs, $12,000. Then Vanessa wanted to study abroad junior year, another $6,000 beyond what financial aid covered. Each time I told myself it was temporary, that once Vanessa graduated and got a job, once Mom maybe found full-time work, I could stop. I could start saving for my own life. But it never stopped. Vanessa graduated with a finance degree and got hired at a prestigious firm in Cleveland making $78,000 right out of college, which I thought meant my financial support could end. Instead, she moved into an expensive apartment in Tremont that cost $1,850 a month because she needed to live somewhere that matched her new professional image. She bought a new wardrobe, started going to expensive brunches and networking events, joined a yoga studio that cost $200 monthly. I kept sending Mom money because property taxes kept going up, because the water heater failed, because Mom's hours got cut at her admin job. $800 a month, every month, through automatic transfer so I wouldn't have to think about it too hard. Vanessa never asked where Mom got the extra money. She just assumed Mom was managing somehow on her own. When Vanessa got promoted 2 years later and her salary jumped to $95,000, she bought a BMW 3 Series. When she got engaged to Preston 6 months ago, they'd registered for wedding gifts at stores I couldn't afford to shop at, requested contributions to their honeymoon fund for a 2-week trip to the Maldives that would cost more than I made in 3 months. Through all of it, I kept working my quiet job in Pittsburgh, living in my 1-bedroom apartment that cost $1,100 a month, driving my 2011 Mazda with 140,000 miles on it, sending money home, showing up to family events in my same suit because I couldn't justify buying a new one when Mom still needed help with expenses. At the engagement party, after Vanessa's announcement about me being pathetic, I set down my champagne glass and walked out. Didn't say goodbye, didn't make a scene, just left through the side entrance and drove back to Pittsburgh in silence, my hands shaking on the steering wheel the whole way. I got home at 11:37 p.m., sat in my dark apartment, and opened my banking app to look at something I'd been avoiding for months. My savings account had $3,200 in it. Total. After 8 years of working full-time with regular raises, after never taking vacations or eating at nice restaurants or buying anything that wasn't strictly necessary, I had less than most people my age had in their checking accounts. I had a retirement fund that was embarrassingly small because I could only contribute 3% to my 401k instead of the 15% financial advisors recommended. I had no house, no wedding fund for a partner I didn't have because I never had time or money to date properly, no safety net if I lost my job or got sick. I'd given everything to keep my family comfortable, while they assumed I was just bad with money or unmotivated or pathetic. The word kept echoing in my head. Pathetic. From my little sister who I'd put through college, who'd never asked where mom got money when she needed it, who thought I was an embarrassment because I didn't drive a luxury car or wear designer suits. Monday morning, I woke up at 6:15 a.m. like always, got ready for work, made coffee in my decade-old coffee maker. But instead of starting my usual routine, I opened my laptop and created a spreadsheet. I was good with data, good with numbers. It's what I did for a living. I started pulling records. 8 years of bank statements, Venmo transfers, checks written to mom, tuition payments made directly to Ohio State, receipts for the car I'd bought mom, the roof repair bill I'd paid, the medical expenses I'd covered when mom's insurance didn't. I created columns: date, description, amount, recipient. I worked through my entire lunch break, stayed late at the office, came home, and kept going until midnight. By the time I finished, the spreadsheet had 847 entries spanning 8 years. The total at the bottom made my chest hurt. $267,340. That's what I'd given my family over 8 years. An average of $33,417.50 per year, $2,784.79 per month. More than my rent, more than my car payment and insurance and groceries combined. I'd given them $250,000 while living like a college student, and they thought I was pathetic for not having more to show for my life. I sat there staring at that number until my vision blurred. Then I opened a new document and started writing emails. The first was to mom. Subject line, financial support ending. I kept it brief, professional, like I was writing to a client. Explained that effective immediately, I would no longer be providing financial support, that I needed to focus on my own financial stability and future, that I'd given $267,340 over 8 years and needed to stop. I attached the spreadsheet as proof, every transaction documented. I wrote that I loved her, but couldn't continue sacrificing my own life. I scheduled it to send Wednesday morning at 8 a.m. The second email was to Vanessa. Subject line, your comments at your engagement party. This one I let myself be more honest. I wrote about the $156,000 I'd contributed to her college expenses, the money I'd sent for her study abroad, the graduation gift check of $2,000 she'd never thanked me for. I wrote about how I'd been living on less than $30,000 a year after supporting her and mom so they could maintain comfortable lives. I wrote about her BMW and her expensive apartment and her luxury wedding registry and how she'd called me pathetic while wearing a dress that cost more than I spent on clothes in 5 years. I attached the same spreadsheet. I scheduled it to send Wednesday at 8:05 a.m. Then I wrote a third email to Preston, Vanessa's fiancé, because I was tired of being quiet. I explained that while he was planning an expensive wedding to my sister, she had no idea that her college education and comfortable lifestyle had been subsidized by her pathetic older brother, who she thought was too poor to matter. I suggested he might want to know who he was marrying, someone who could accept years of financial support and then mock the person who'd provided it. I scheduled that for Wednesday at 8:10 a.m. Wednesday morning, I woke up to 37 missed calls and 43 text messages. The emails had sent right on schedule. Mom's messages were panicked, apologetic, begging me to call her. Vanessa's were angry at first, calling me a liar and saying I was trying to ruin her engagement, then shifting to confused and defensive. Preston had apparently received my email and confronted Vanessa. Their texts were chaotic. I silenced my phone and went to work like normal, sat at my desk analyzing datasets, ate lunch at my desk, stayed focused on my job. At 2:47 p.m., my personal cell rang from a number I didn't recognize. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Daniel Garrett? A woman's voice, professional, unfamiliar. This is Linda Zhao from Cleveland Trust and Estate Planning. I've been trying to reach you regarding your father's estate. Do you have a moment to talk? I felt confusion ripple through me. My father died 8 years ago. His estate was settled. Actually, that's what I'm calling about. There was a trust that wasn't distributed at the time of death because you were listed as the sole beneficiary but needed to claim it before age 35. That deadline is in 6 months. I've been trying to contact you for the past year, but the address we had was outdated. My mouth went dry. A trust? What are you talking about? Linda explained that my father had set up a trust 15 years ago when he'd gotten his big promotion at the manufacturing company, something he'd done through his workplace benefits advisor. The trust was funded through a portion of his salary over 15 years, managed conservatively, meant to give his children a financial foundation. But there were specific terms. The trust would only be distributed to children who demonstrated financial responsibility and weren't already wealthy by age 35. Dad had split it 60-40, with the larger portion going to me because I was older, and Dad apparently believed in primogeniture or something. The total value of the trust, after 15 years of growth and conservative investment, was $890,000. My portion was $534,000. Vanessa's was $356,000. I sat frozen at my desk, phone pressed to my ear, while Linda explained the next steps. I needed to come to Cleveland, meet with her in person, sign documents, provide proof of identity and current financials to confirm I met the responsibility requirements. She'd been trying to reach me at my mom's house, had sent letters that apparently Mom had never forwarded. The deadline was March 15th, 6 months away. If I didn't claim it by then, My portion would revert to charity, as specified in Dad's original terms. I barely remember the rest of the conversation. I scheduled a meeting for Friday, hung up, sat staring at my computer screen without seeing it. My father, who died 8 years ago, had left me over $500,000 that I'd known nothing about. Money that could have changed everything. Money that my mother had apparently received notification about and never told me about. I felt sick. I left work early, something I never did. Drove home in a daze. My phone was still blowing up with messages from Mom and Vanessa. I ignored all of them and called Linda Zhao back. The letters you sent to my mother's address, do you have copies? Did she sign for them? Yes, we have certified mail records. Your mother signed for 3 separate letters over the past 14 months. The first was sent when you turned 33, as an early notification that you'd be eligible to claim at 35. The subsequent letters were follow-ups. She paused. Is there a problem? She never told me. She's been accepting financial support from me for years and never mentioned there was a trust. Linda was quiet for a moment. I see. Well, the good news is you still have time to claim it. The responsibility requirement is primarily to ensure the beneficiary isn't involved in serious debt or criminal activity. Based on what I'm seeing from the preliminary background check we ran, you'll qualify easily. She hesitated. Your sister's portion is different. She has to claim by age 35 as well. But there's an additional stipulation your father included. She has to demonstrate financial need, or that she's used her resources to help family. It's a character clause your father was specific about. She has until age 30 to claim, or the deadline, whichever comes first. She's 29 now, correct? Yes. Then she has until her 30th birthday. That's next March as well, if I'm reading the birth dates correctly. I ended the call and sat on my couch in my small apartment. The apartment I'd lived in for 6 years because I couldn't afford anything better while sending money home. My mother had known about this trust. She'd received letters telling her I had over $500,000 waiting for me, and she'd never said a word. She'd continued accepting my checks, my transfers, my payments for her expenses. She'd let me struggle while she hoarded information about money my father had wanted me to have. The betrayal felt physical, like something crushing my chest. I opened my laptop and looked at my email inbox, found the automated responses that had come in. Mom had replied to my Wednesday morning email, a long, rambling message about how she was sorry, how she didn't know I'd been struggling so much, how she thought I was doing fine because I never complained. Vanessa's email was defensive, saying she'd had no idea I was keeping score of everything, that family wasn't supposed to be transactional, that I was being cruel bringing this up right before her wedding. Preston had copied Vanessa on a response, asking for clarification about the financial details because it affected their prenup discussions. I wrote back to Linda Zhao and asked for copies of every letter she'd sent to my mother's address, certified mail receipts, everything. She sent them within the hour. 3 letters, postmarked over the past 14 months, all signed for by Rebecca Garrett, my mother. Each letter clearly stating that Daniel Garrett had a trust fund waiting for him, providing contact information, explaining the deadline. Each letter my mother had received and hidden while continuing to accept my money. I forwarded all of it to Mom and Vanessa. Sent it Thursday morning at 6 a.m. with a simple message. This is what Mom's been hiding while taking my money for 8 years. I'm done. Then I called my mother's cell phone. She answered on the first ring, voice shaky and tearful. Danny, please, let me explain. Explain what? That you've known for over a year I had $500,000 in a trust fund and you never told me? That you kept cashing my checks and accepting my transfers while hiding information about money Dad left specifically for me? I was going to tell you, I just didn't know how to bring it up, and then time kept passing and it got harder and you knew I was struggling. You knew I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car and never took vacations. You knew because I told you I couldn't always afford to help as much as you needed. And you still said nothing. I didn't think you were really struggling, she said, and her voice had that defensive edge I recognized from my childhood. You have a good job. You always said you were fine. I thought you were just being cheap, saving your money instead of helping family. I didn't realize. You didn't realize because you didn't ask. You just took what I gave and assumed I could afford it. I paused, let the anger settle into something colder. Did Vanessa know? No. I never told her either. I didn't tell anyone. Why not? She was quiet for so long I thought she'd hung up. Then, because if you knew about the trust, you'd stop helping me. I'd have to manage on my own. And I liked not having to worry. I liked knowing you'd send money when I needed it. It was easier than budgeting or getting a better job or downsizing the house. The honesty was somehow worse than a lie. She'd kept the secret deliberately, strategically, to maintain her financial comfort at my expense. I'm going to Cleveland Friday to claim the trust, I said, and I'm never sending you another dollar. Figure out your own finances. Sell the house if you have to. Get a full-time job. I don't care anymore. Danny, please don't be like this. I'm your mother. Family is supposed to help each other. I helped you for 8 years. You helped yourself to my future. We're done. I hung up. Friday afternoon, I sat in Linda Zhao's office in downtown Cleveland, a 14th floor conference room with a view of Lake Erie. Linda was in her mid-50s, sharp gray suit, the kind of calm professionalism that comes from handling difficult family situations for decades. She had all the paperwork ready, explained each document as I signed. "Your father was a thoughtful man," she said while I initialed page after page. "When he set up this trust, he was very specific about the terms. He wanted to make sure his children had resources, but also that they'd learned financial responsibility first. The age 35 requirement was deliberate. He said most people don't truly understand money until their mid-30s. She slid another document across the table. "He also included a letter for each of you, to be given when you claimed the trust. This is yours." The envelope was sealed, my name written in my father's handwriting. I stared at it, not ready to open it yet. "What happens with Vanessa's portion?" I asked. "She has to claim by her 30th birthday, which is March 8th. That's also when your 35th birthday deadline falls. Interestingly, your father structured it so both deadlines would align." Linda folded her hands. "But there's the character clause I mentioned. She has to demonstrate financial need or prove she's used her resources to help family. Based on what I understand about her current situation, she's making 6 figures, drives a luxury car, lives in an expensive apartment. She likely won't qualify unless she can show she's been supporting family members." I thought about Vanessa's BMW, her designer clothes, her expensive lifestyle. "She hasn't been supporting anyone. I've been supporting everyone." "Then she probably won't qualify for the trust. It will go to the designated charity, a financial literacy nonprofit your father supported." Linda paused. "I should tell you, your mother called me yesterday. She was quite upset, demanded to know if there was any way she could claim the trusts on your behalf, since you're both her children. I explained that the trusts are specifically for you and your sister, not for her, and that misrepresenting the situation would be fraud." "What did she say?" She hung up. Linda handed me a pen. "Sign here, and the trust will be transferred to an account in your name within 5 business days. I'd recommend meeting with a financial advisor. This is a life-changing amount of money, and you want to handle it wisely." I signed the final document at 3:42 p.m. on Friday afternoon. Linda shook my hand, gave me her card, told me to call if I had any questions. I walked out of her office building into the cold Cleveland afternoon, sat in my car in the parking garage, and opened my father's letter. The handwriting was familiar, steady and practical like he'd been. "Danny, if you're reading this, you've made it to 35 without squandering your future, and I'm proud of you. I'm writing this when you're 20, and I have no idea what your life will look like 15 years from now, but I hope you've found work you enjoy and people who appreciate you. I set up this trust because I wanted to give you a foundation without making things too easy. Money that comes too young can destroy motivation. Money that comes when you've already built a life can amplify what you've already created. I split the trust unequally because I know Vanessa will always find a way to land on her feet. She's charming and ambitious and will marry well or climb the corporate ladder or both. You're different. You're steady and loyal, and you'll probably spend more time helping others than yourself. That's admirable, but it can also mean you get taken advantage of. Don't let that happen. This money is yours, not your family's, not your future partner's, unless you choose to share it. Yours. Use it to build the life you want. And Danny, if your mother tries to claim this for you or convince you to share it with her, don't. I love your mother, but she's never been good with money or boundaries. She'll take everything you give and then ask for more. Be smarter than I was. Protect yourself." The letter was signed and dated 15 years ago, 2 years before he died. He'd known. He'd known Mom would try to take advantage, known I'd be the one helping everyone else, known I'd need protection from my own family. The trust was that protection, delayed until I was old enough to accept it without guilt. I sat in my car crying for 20 minutes, then drove back to Pittsburgh with my father's letter on the passenger seat. Monday morning, I transferred $15,000 from my checking account to my savings as an initial padding while I waited for the trust to clear. I scheduled a meeting with a financial advisor, a woman named Grace Harper, who specialized in sudden windfalls and inheritance management. I wrote a formal letter to Mom informing her that our financial relationship was permanently ended, sent via certified mail so there'd be a record. I blocked Vanessa's number because her messages had devolved into attacks about me being selfish and ruining her wedding with drama. Preston had apparently called off the engagement, or at least postponed it indefinitely after learning about the financial deception in Vanessa's past. She blamed me for that too. The trust funds cleared the following Wednesday. $534,000 deposited into an account I'd opened specifically for this purpose. I met with Grace Harper that Friday, brought all my financial records, my debt summary, minimal, I'd been too broke to accumulate much debt, my expenses, my goals. Grace was in her early 50s, had been a financial advisor for 26 years, had a wall full of credentials and awards. She looked over everything with a practiced eye, then leaned back in her chair. "You've been living on approximately $30,000 a year while making $89,000. That's remarkable restraint, even if it was forced. It means you already know how to live within your means. This money won't corrupt you because you've already proven you don't need luxury to survive." She pulled out a calculator and started running numbers. "Here's what I recommend. Pay off your car loan completely. That's $4,300. Set aside $50,000 as a true emergency fund. 6 months of actual comfortable living expenses. Put $100,000 in a high-yield savings account as medium-term accessible money. The remaining $379,700 goes into a diversified investment portfolio, conservative growth strategy. You're 34, you have time for compound growth, but you're also old enough to want stability. What about a house? I asked. Could I buy a house? You could, but I'd wait 6 months. Let the investments start working. Let yourself adjust to having this safety net, then reassess what you want. Buying a house immediately is how lottery winners go broke. You're not a lottery winner, you're a person who's been responsible for 8 years and now has resources to match that responsibility. Don't change who you are, just upgrade your circumstances gradually. I followed her advice exactly. Over the next 2 months, my life changed in quiet ways. I paid off my car and felt the relief of not having that payment anymore. I moved from my tiny 1-bedroom to a nicer 2-bedroom apartment in a better neighborhood, $1,600 a month instead of $1,100. Still affordable, but notably nicer. I bought new clothes, not designer but quality, replaced my worn-out suit with 3 new ones. I started dating someone I'd met through a friend, a teacher named Alicia, who thought it was impressive that I'd supported my family for years, even if they didn't appreciate it. I joined a gym. I took a weekend trip to Chicago just because I wanted to. Small things that normal people did, things I'd denied myself for years. The investment portfolio grew slowly and steadily, exactly as Grace predicted. My job gave me a raise to $94,000, and for the first time in 8 years, I could put the full amount toward my own life. I increased my 401k contribution to 18%. I started saving for the house I might want in a year or 2. I felt lighter, unshackled from the constant weight of other people's financial needs. Mom tried calling a few times, sent emails I didn't open, showed up at my apartment once, and I didn't answer the door. Vanessa's wedding to Preston was postponed indefinitely, their relationship apparently imploding under the weight of her financial dishonesty and entitlement. I heard through extended family that she'd moved back in with Mom, that she was furious with me for ruining her life by revealing the truth. I felt nothing about it. Just relief that it wasn't my problem anymore. In January, 3 months after I'd claimed my trust, I got another call from Linda Zhao. Daniel, I wanted to give you a heads up. Your sister contacted me asking about her trust. She's desperate to claim it, but she can't meet the character requirements. She tried to argue that living with your mother rent-free for 3 months counts as supporting family, but that's not what the clause means. Your father was very specific. It means financial support given to family members in need, documented and sustained over time. She doesn't qualify. What happens to her portion? I already knew, but I wanted to hear it confirmed. It goes to charity, the financial literacy nonprofit your father designated. $356,000 will be transferred to them on March 9th, the day after her 30th birthday passes without her claiming it. Linda paused. She's been calling me daily, sometimes multiple times a day, demanding I make an exception. I've explained that I can't alter the terms of a trust document. She's threatened to sue me, threatened to sue you, threatened to sue the charity. It's been difficult. I'm sorry you're dealing with that. It's part of the job, but I wanted you to know she blames you entirely. She's telling people you've stolen her inheritance, that you've manipulated the situation, that you're a terrible brother. I'm documenting all her calls in case legal action becomes necessary. Document everything. If she sues, I want records. Linda's voice softened. Your father knew what he was doing when he set these terms. He was protecting both of you from your mother's influence and from making mistakes with money you hadn't earned. Vanessa's failure to qualify isn't your fault. It's the result of her own choices. We hung up, and I sat with that for a while. My sister, who'd called me pathetic, who'd told me to stop embarrassing her at family events, was now losing $356,000 because she'd never learned to think beyond herself. Because in 8 years of financial comfort, she'd never once asked where Mom got extra money or offered to help, because she'd built a life of luxury on my sacrifice and called me pathetic for not having the same. The final confrontation happened at Mom's house in late February. I'd been avoiding family entirely, but my Aunt Carol, my father's sister, had called asking me to come to a family meeting. She was one of the few family members who'd always been kind to me, who'd sent me birthday cards and asked how I was doing. She said Mom and Vanessa had requested the meeting, wanted to resolve things before Vanessa's birthday passed and her trust eligibility expired. I almost said no, but Carol promised she'd be there as a mediator, and something about her tone made me agree. I drove to Cleveland on a Saturday morning, arrived at Mom's house at 11 a.m., the house I'd paid property taxes on for years, kept maintained with my money, supported while living in my small apartment. Carol met me at the door, hugged me, whispered that she was proud of me for standing up for myself. Inside, Mom and Vanessa sat on the couch looking like they'd prepared for battle. Mom had clearly been crying. Vanessa looked furious and desperate in equal measure. Carol gestured me to a chair across from them, positioned herself between us like a referee. "Thank you for coming, Danny," Carol started. "Your mom and sister wanted a chance to talk to you before the trust deadline passes. I'm here to make sure everyone stays civil." She looked at Mom. "Rebecca, you wanted to start?" Mom's voice was shaky, but had an underlying demand to it. "Danny, I know you're angry with me, and I understand why. I made mistakes, but we're family, and family forgives each other. I'm asking you to help Vanessa qualify for her trust. If you write a letter to the trust administrator saying Vanessa has been supporting you financially, they'll accept it, and she can claim the money. The audacity of it took my breath away. You want me to lie and commit fraud so Vanessa can get money she doesn't deserve? Vanessa jumped in. I do deserve it. Dad left that money for me. You're keeping it from me out of spite. No, Dad left that money for you if you met certain requirements. You didn't. That's not my fault. You could fix this. You could write the letter and I'd get the money and we could all move on. But you're choosing to be vindictive instead. Vanessa's voice was rising, the same entitled tone she'd used at her engagement party. Why should I help you get $356,000 when you called me pathetic? When you told me to stop coming to family events because I embarrassed you? I was upset that night. I didn't mean it. You're being petty holding one comment against me forever. Carol intervened. Vanessa, it wasn't one comment. Danny has documentation showing he supported you and your mother for 8 years while you built a life of luxury. You never thanked him, never acknowledged his sacrifice, and then you publicly humiliated him. Why should he commit fraud to help you now? Because he's my brother. Because family helps family. The irony was so thick I almost laughed. I helped family for 8 years. I gave $267,340 while you spent money on BMWs and designer clothes. I lived in a tiny apartment and drove an old car and never took a vacation so you could study abroad and live comfortably. And the one time I showed up to your event not looking wealthy enough for your standards, you called me pathetic and told me not to come back. That's how you treat family who helps you. Mom tried a different approach. Danny, honey, I know I should have told you about the trust earlier. That was wrong. But think about what your father would want. He'd want his children to have that money. He wouldn't want it going to some charity instead of Vanessa. Actually, he specifically set up the terms knowing Vanessa might not qualify. He wanted the money to go to charity if she didn't demonstrate the right character. He wrote me a letter saying exactly that. I pulled out my father's letter, which I'd brought knowing this might come up, and read the relevant section aloud. The part about Vanessa landing on her feet, about me being loyal to a fault, about not letting Mom manipulate me into giving away what was mine. Carol nodded slowly. Your father was a wise man. He knew his family well. Mom's face flushed red. He had no right to judge me like that. I was his wife. I deserved to be taken care of. You were taken care of, I said. He left you life insurance, a paid-off house, and he probably assumed I'd help you, which I did, for 8 years. What you didn't deserve was to hide information about my trust while taking my money. I'm your mother. You owe me respect. And you're supposed to protect your children, not exploit them. You failed. Vanessa stood up, her voice shrill now. Fine, fine. Keep your money, keep your stupid moral high ground, but don't expect me to ever speak to you again. You're dead to me. Both of you are dead to me unless you help me get that trust. Carol stood as well. Vanessa, I think you should leave. You're not accomplishing anything except proving Danny's point about your character. Oh, so you're on his side too? Perfect. Everyone's against me because I dared to want what's rightfully mine. It's not rightfully yours if you didn't earn it according to the terms, Carol said firmly. Your father set those terms for a reason. Maybe if you'd spent less time shopping and more time being a decent human being, you'd qualify. Vanessa grabbed her purse and stormed out, slamming the door hard enough to rattle the windows. Mom looked at me with tears streaming down her face. You've destroyed this family. I hope you're happy. I stood up, looked at my mother, the woman who'd raised me but also exploited me, and felt nothing but exhaustion. I didn't destroy anything. I just stopped letting you destroy me. There's a difference. I turned to Carol. Thank you for trying to mediate. I appreciate it. Danny, wait. Mom's voice was desperate now. Please. I can't afford this house on my own. Without your support, and without Vanessa's rent money, I can't make the property taxes and utilities. I'll have to sell. Then sell. Downsize to something you can afford. Get a full-time job. Do what every other adult does when they can't afford their lifestyle. I'm 59 years old. Who's going to hire me full-time at 59 with minimal experience? That's not my problem to solve anymore. Mom, you had a year to tell me about my trust and didn't. You chose your comfort over my future. Now you get to live with that choice. I walked toward the door, Carol following me out. On the porch, she hugged me again. Your father would be proud of you. I know this is hard, but you did the right thing. It doesn't feel right. It feels like everything's broken. It was already broken, Danny. You just stopped pretending it wasn't. I drove back to Pittsburgh feeling hollowed out, but also strangely free. I'd cut the last tie to people who saw me as a resource rather than a person. It hurt, but it was the right kind of hurt. The kind that comes from setting a broken bone so it can heal properly. March 8th came and went. Vanessa's 30th birthday passed without her claiming the trust. On March 9th, I got a confirmation email from Linda Zhao that the $356,000 had been transferred to the financial literacy nonprofit as specified in my father's trust documents. Vanessa's portion was gone, donated to an organization that would teach young people how to manage money responsibly. The irony wasn't lost on me. I got one final message from Vanessa that afternoon, sent from an email address I didn't have blocked. Subject line: I hope you rot. The message itself was a paragraph of vitriol about how I'd stolen her inheritance, destroyed her engagement, ruined her relationship with Preston, forced her to move back in with Mom, and made her life miserable. She said she'd never forgive me, that I was the worst brother imaginable, that she hoped I choked on my money. I read it once, then archived it without responding. There was nothing to say. She'd lost the trust because of her own choices, her own character failures. I just stopped enabling her delusions. 2 weeks later, I got a Facebook friend request from Preston, Vanessa's ex-fiancé. I accepted out of curiosity, and he immediately sent me a message. Danny, I wanted to reach out and apologize for not seeing the situation clearly when I was with Vanessa. She painted a very different picture of your family dynamics, and I believed her without question. After we broke up, I did some reflecting on how she handled money and relationships, and I realized I dodged a serious bullet. Thank you for sending me that email about the financial support you'd provided. It opened my eyes to who she really was before I married her. I hope you're doing well. I wrote back thanking him and wishing him luck. He seemed like a decent guy who'd gotten caught up in Vanessa's performance of success without realizing it was built on someone else's sacrifice. We didn't become friends, but the exchange felt like closure on that chapter. 6 months after claiming the trust, I bought a house. Not a mansion, just a nice 3-bedroom ranch in a good neighborhood outside Pittsburgh, $285,000, well within my budget. I put down 20% and got a mortgage for the rest, kept the payments manageable. I furnished it slowly, buying quality pieces instead of rushing to fill every room. I had a home office where I could work remotely when my company allowed it, a guest room for the friends I was finally making time for, a backyard where I could sit on summer evenings and read without feeling guilty for not working overtime. Alicia and I had been dating for 8 months by then, taking things slow, building something real. She'd met my Aunt Carol, who loved her. She knew the whole story about my family and had never once suggested I should forgive them or try to reconcile. She understood that some relationships were too damaged to repair, that choosing yourself wasn't selfish when the alternative was being destroyed by people who should have protected you. One evening, we were sitting on my new back porch, drinking wine and watching the sunset, when she asked me something I'd been avoiding thinking about. Do you think you'll ever talk to your mom or sister again? I considered it. Really considered it. Maybe someday if they genuinely change and take responsibility for what they did. But I'm not holding my breath. People like that don't usually change. They just get better at pretending. That's sad. It is. But it's also reality. My father knew what they were like, and he protected me the only way he could. I'm not going to waste that gift by letting them back in just because society says families should stick together. Alicia squeezed my hand. I think your father would be proud of the man you've become, not just because you claimed the trust, but because you finally stood up for yourself. A year after everything fell apart, I got a letter from Mom. Actual handwritten letter, sent to my new address that she must have gotten from Aunt Carol. She'd sold the house, moved to a smaller condo, gotten a full-time job as an office manager making $48,000 a year. She wrote that she was learning to budget, to live within her means, to take responsibility for her own life. She apologized for hiding the trust, for taking my money while knowing I had resources I wasn't aware of, for choosing comfort over honesty. She said she understood if I never forgave her, but she wanted me to know she was trying to be better. The letter ended with a request to meet for coffee sometime. No expectations, just a chance to talk. I showed it to Grace Harper during one of our quarterly financial review meetings. She'd become more than just my advisor. She was a mentor who'd helped me navigate the emotional aspects of sudden wealth alongside the practical ones. She read the letter carefully, then handed it back. What do you want to do? She asked. I don't know. Part of me wants to believe she's really changed. Part of me thinks this is just another manipulation. Both can be true. She might be genuinely trying to improve while also hoping it leads to you helping her again financially. The question is whether you can have a relationship with appropriate boundaries, where you're clear that you'll never support her financially again, and you stick to that. Can I trust her if I do meet with her? Grace shrugged. Maybe, maybe not. But you can trust yourself now. You know what you're worth, what you deserve, what you won't accept. That's what matters. Your father's trust didn't just give you money, it gave you the foundation to stand on so nobody can push you around anymore. I met Mom for coffee 3 weeks later at a neutral cafe in Cleveland. She looked older, more tired, but also somehow lighter. We sat across from each other with our drinks, the silence awkward until she spoke. Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would. I almost didn't. I meant what I said in the letter. I'm trying to be better. Living within my means is hard. I'm working full-time for the first time in decades, and I'm exhausted most days. But I'm doing it. I'm taking care of myself instead of depending on you. That's good. That's what you should have been doing all along. I know. She stared into her coffee. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did. Hiding the trust from you while taking your money, that was unforgivable. I told myself I'd tell you eventually, but I kept finding reasons to delay because I liked not having to worry. I was selfish. I'm sorry. The apology sounded genuine, but I'd heard genuine-sounding apologies before. What about Vanessa? Have you talked to her about her role in all this? Mom sighed. Vanessa moved to Chicago. She got a new job, fresh start. Refuses to talk about what happened. She's still angry at you, blames you for everything. I've tried to explain that she lost the trust because of the terms your father set and her own choices, but she doesn't want to hear it. She's cut me off almost as completely as she cut you off. How do you feel about that? Sad, but also realistic. Vanessa has always been the way she is. Your father saw it, tried to correct it with the trust terms, but you can't force someone to develop character they don't want to have. She looked at me directly. I'm not asking for money. I'm not asking you to fix my relationship with Vanessa. I'm just asking if there's any chance we can rebuild some kind of relationship with boundaries, where I respect that you have your own life and I manage mine. I thought about it. About the years of resentment, the betrayal, the exploitation, but also about the fact that she was my mother, flawed but trying, and that holding on to anger forever would hurt me more than her. I'm willing to try, I said carefully, but the boundaries are firm. I will never give you money again, never bail you out of financial problems, never go back to the way things were. If you can accept that, we can maybe have coffee occasionally and slowly rebuild trust. But if you ever ask me for financial help, even once, we're done permanently. I understand. I accept those terms. We talked for another hour about surface things. Her job, my house, Aunt Carol's upcoming retirement trip to Ireland. It felt strange and formal, but it was a start. Not forgiveness exactly. Just an acknowledgement that we were both trying to move forward differently than before. 2 years after claiming the trust, I proposed to Alicia. We'd been dating for over 2 years by then, living together for 6 months, building a life that felt solid and real. I proposed at the same park where we'd had our first official date, nothing fancy, just the two of us and a ring I'd saved for and chosen carefully. She said yes immediately, cried happy tears, and we started planning a wedding that would be about us, not about impressing anyone or meeting anyone's standards but our own. Mom asked if she could come to the wedding. I said yes, with the caveat that if she caused any drama or made any comments about money or made the day about her, she'd be asked to leave. She agreed. Vanessa didn't ask, didn't reach out, was still living in Chicago, building her new life separate from all of us. I sent her an invitation anyway, addressed to her new address that Aunt Carol had given me, with a note saying I hoped she was doing well and she was welcome if she wanted to come. She didn't respond. The wedding was small, 60 people, at a nice venue, but not extravagant. Alicia's family, my Aunt Carol and her family, friends from work, Grace Harper, who'd become important enough in my life that I wanted her there. Mom came, sat quietly in the back, cried during the ceremony, congratulated us at the reception, and left early without asking for anything or making a scene. It felt like progress, fragile, but real. During the reception, Aunt Carol pulled me aside and handed me an envelope. Your father would have wanted you to have this on your wedding day. I've been holding on to it since he died, with instructions to give it to you when you got married. He wrote it the same time he set up the trusts. Inside was another letter in Dad's handwriting. Danny, if you're reading this, you've found someone worth marrying, and I'm happy for you even though I'm not there to see it. Marriage is hard work, but it's worth it if you choose the right partner. Choose someone who sees you as a partner, not a provider. Someone who values what you give emotionally, not just financially. Someone who would stick with you if everything fell apart. I hope you've learned by now to protect yourself from people who take advantage of your good nature. I hope you've claimed the trust and used it wisely. I hope you've stopped letting your mother and sister bleed you dry financially and emotionally. If you haven't, if you're still sacrificing yourself for people who don't appreciate it, stop. Stop now. You deserve better. Build your life with someone who knows your worth. Build something that can't be taken from you by guilt or obligation. And Danny, be happy. That's all I ever wanted for you. To be happy and stable and free from the weight of other people's poor choices. The letter was dated 2 months before he died. He'd known somehow that I'd need this permission. Permission to choose myself. Permission to be happy. I folded the letter carefully and put it in my pocket, felt Alicia's hand slip into mine as the reception continued around us, and thought about how far I'd come from that engagement party where Vanessa had called me pathetic. I'd lost a sister and nearly lost a mother, but I'd gained a foundation, a partner, a life built on truth instead of obligation. That felt like the better trade. 3 years after claiming the trust, I got a LinkedIn message from Vanessa. Just 2 sentences. I heard you got married. Congratulations. I stared at it for a long time before responding. Thank you. I hope you're doing well in Chicago. She didn't write back, but the message felt like something. Not reconciliation, maybe not even forgiveness, but an acknowledgement that we'd both survived the implosion of our family and moved forward separately. That was enough. My investment portfolio had grown to over $680,000 with the market gains and my continued contributions. I'd gotten 2 more raises at work, was making $108,000 a year now, had been promoted to senior data analyst with a team of 3 people reporting to me. Alicia and I were talking about starting a family, maybe in a year or 2 when we felt more settled. Mom and I had coffee every few months, kept things surface level but civil, and she'd never once asked me for money. She was managing on her own, seemed genuinely proud of her independence even though it was harder than the life she'd had when I was supporting her. I still thought about those 8 years sometimes. The $267,340 I'd given while living like I was barely scraping by. The sacrifice that nobody had appreciated until it stopped. But I also thought about the $534,000 my father had left me, the safety net that let me finally build my own life. The betrayal had hurt, was still a scar I carried, but it had also freed me. Freed me from obligation to people who saw me as a resource. Freed me from the guilt of never being enough. Freed me to understand that my worth wasn't measured by how much I gave to people who wouldn't give the same back. Vanessa had called me pathetic for not being wealthy enough to impress her friends. She'd lost over $350,000 because she'd never learned that wealth wasn't just about money, it was about character. My father had tried to teach her that through the trust terms. She'd failed the lesson, and I'd passed it. Not because I was better than her, but because I'd been forced to learn it through years of struggle she'd never had to face. The irony was sharp and satisfying in equal measure. Sometimes late at night, when I couldn't sleep, I'd pull up that spreadsheet I'd made, the one documenting every dollar I'd sent home over 8 years. I'd look at the total, $267,340, and feel the weight of it. All the vacations I didn't take, the dates I didn't go on because I couldn't afford restaurants, the promotions I didn't celebrate because I was too busy worrying about Mom's property taxes or Vanessa's study abroad fees. But I'd also look at my current net worth, the house equity, the investment portfolio, the emergency fund, the retirement account that was finally growing properly. Over $1 million in total assets at age 37, built from the foundation my father had given me and the financial discipline those hard years had taught me. I'd lost years of my life supporting people who didn't appreciate it, but I'd gained something too. Clarity about who I was and what I'd accept. Boundaries that protected my future. The knowledge that I could survive being called pathetic by people whose opinions didn't actually matter. The trust fund had been my father's final gift, but the real inheritance was the letter, the permission to choose myself. The validation that I wasn't wrong to be angry. The understanding that sometimes the best thing you can do for family is stop letting them destroy you. Vanessa had wanted me to commit fraud to help her claim money she hadn't earned. Mom had wanted me to keep sacrificing my future for her comfort. They'd both wanted me to stay small and struggling and generous to a fault. But I'd chosen differently. I'd chosen the life my father had wanted for me, the one where I was happy and stable and free. And that choice, more than the money, was what made me rich. Thanks for watching till the end. Make sure to subscribe and like to not miss the next story.